Hey guys, Z here. You know what week it is? That's right, it's Summoner Duels R week. Or I guess no legendary Black Knight game mode for a week, which might be a lot more appealing to you guys. I forgot that Summoner Duels R doesn't run often, like at all. It's once every 2 months, so roughly 6 times a year, which is still more often than Seer Snare, which is a mode most people actually like. Ain't that something? But why am I bringing this up, said the people who didn't read the title of the video, and me, who wrote down those words to read out loud? Well, it's because there's something that needs to be said. Summoner Duels R, and probably by extension, basically exactly the rest of Summoner Duels, is a very dead game mode. To the surprise of nobody, I would assume. Okay, I already knew Summoner Duels was never really that popular of a mode. I'm not a complete Arden, thank you very much. I just never really thought about how unpopular it was. I knew in my head it wasn't played a lot, but having an actual number for it really highlights how little people like this mode. I hope that's not just a thing specific to me and maybe more people understand what I mean. It's like a visual cue more so than an auditory one, but I think you get what I mean. I know on my end, I didn't have that much intent to play SCR this season. I definitely changed my mind later, mind you. But even when I chose to just play one match to maintain my rank, because there really is no incentive to do it more than once, that still kept me among the top 200 to 300 players. Although, for what it's worth, if a lot of people were never interested in the mode to begin with, it makes sense that the ranks are like that, which is why I decided to test this on a side account. I mean, my actual one only account, IS, please don't shut it down. But there was a slight problem. Not really a problem to be quite H, but something worth mentioning. Already, one of the most notable points about it is that you can't just naturally enter the mode. It requires you to play some favors first, which for what it's worth is mostly just bots for your first 3 matches, so it's not the hardest, but I think a lot of people really don't want to touch favors either, which is already putting up more of a barrier for people. Even if it's just entering a match every other season, you can't just do that, and that's not even mentioning the other badge you have to get at a higher amount of favor. Regardless, I did a few matches, got the amount of favor necessary to enter Summoner Duels R, and did the 3 mandatory bot matches. And this is where I was both surprised and not really that surprised. Not surprised because, again, not a very popular mode, but I figured the rankings would at least be somewhat lower, you know, maybe like 100k or something. That's kind of what you can expect from a lot of other modes. Well, for only doing one single match against an AI opponent, that put my rank at 10,825. And when I did the 3 AI bot matches, I ended up at rank 9,653, which is really bad. Faye is definitely not at the height of its popularity these days. Makes sense when the game is going on its 9th year, which, you know, that's pretty impressive for what it's worth. But you can still go to something like Aether Raids and Tempest Trials and see their rankings, which tends to show a lot more active players. You could argue for Tempest Trials it's just because it's easy enough to auto battle and you get better rewards out of it, which, you know, that's fair. More people are going to participate in that. I could buy that. Aether Raids, however, doesn't really have that same excuse, and even for the higher tiers like Vault of Heaven, which requires active enough participation, not necessarily being amazing at the mode, mind you, you just have to participate enough and then promote into it. You have way more players in there than you do at the bare minimum rank in Summoner Duels, which really goes to show how little interest there is in this mode, which, again, yeah, people don't like this mode, but seeing the numbers for it really paints it for me specifically. I will say, though, I kinda like Summoner Duels. Wait. Before you pelt me with bricks, I should at least mention I only really like Summoner Duels S, which allows you to ban stuff. I will say though, even beyond the amount of units, inheritables, and whatever else you need for the mode, you're kind of just left to fend for yourself half the time. At least for the case of Aether Raids, the game does provide everybody with enough mythics for both Light Season and Astra Season, and they're all fairly decent to strong mythics for the most part, ignoring Ratatasker. So if a new player wanted to get to tier 21 and bounce between that and Vault of Heaven, they could do that pretty easily, even with whatever learning barrier there might be. You get enough time to learn that stuff. I think it would only take a month to get up there, assuming there's no chaos season, but I might be lowballing it just a tiny bit. Regardless, it's pretty easy to do, and even if you don't really want to play the mode all too much, there's an auto dispatch feature that also just helps you climb a bit while getting some rewards along the way. You don't really have that per se with Summoner Duels, although one could argue just going in and instantly surrendering is more or less the same thing, which also is fair. I could contest to that. That same point could be applied to the time commitment necessary to compete as well, but I'm still going to bring it up as I think think it's just as valid. You don't really have to spend nearly as much time making teams for Aether Raids or Arena modes as you do Summoner Duels, because it's not enough that you have a readily applicable teams for almost any scenario. We get new banners roughly every week and a half, which can shake up the entirety of the mode, meaning you will have to readjust your teams constantly. That can apply to essentially every mode, mind you, but the changes are a lot quicker and noticeable in the former, and that's also not mentioning rotating maps and captain skills that make it so you have to readjust the units and strategies you use, on top of having to do some practicing here and there to ensure you have everything patterned down, as well as all the knowledge you need ahead of time to understand what you're doing. On the timer, by the way, I do think it keeps the mode fresh and interesting, which is why I get enjoyment out of it personally, but it is a massive time commitment. And all that combined is why a lot of people just don't bother with the mode itself. Yet, despite that, a lot of the influence and decisions are most likely traced back to Summoner Duels. There are more players in other modes, yet most of the power creep being driven in this game is definitely due to Summoner Duels, and that's probably because it's most likely where most of the money comes from, which is also kind of wild to think about on its own. Like, it really can't just be 100 to 200 players making up a grand majority of the millions they make each month, right? There's definitely casual spending like Fey Pass and maybe a Formal Soul or Binding Worlds pack here and there, but that also makes me wonder how much of a percentage that makes up entirely. Maybe that could be its own video, but for now we gotta talk about something less interesting. Power creep makes money, and Summoner Duels has definitely added some incentivization there, that being a much faster acceleration that only goes up more and more so the new toys can be used there. And it doesn't help that for Aetherids specifically, you can only sell so many people on newer mythics and whatever, because once you have that dedicated core for people, you can kind of just stick with that a lot of the time. Although for what it's worth, a lot of stuff that's specialized in Summoner Duels doesn't tend to carry over to other modes, unless they're built to be ubiquitous in nature, in which case that's over 90% of their unit releases. High threat range Cav Nuke is good everywhere? Who could have thought? Yet, despite a lot of the newer stuff being designed with high-end competitive stuff in mind, you'd think it would cater to a lot more people in general, but I'm not sure how much that is the case beyond character choice. And Emblems too, I guess, because that's just a generally appealing gimmick to most people, and you know, it had to be because they started hiding it on the calendar. So, thanks for that. That didn't work, by the way. Power creep does sell one way or another, and it probably makes more sense in their minds that caters to the base that's willingly spending so much for this stuff anyway, which, yeah, fair game. But that makes me wonder what the majority of people not playing these high-end modes really want out of the game. Actually, I do know they want more casual PvE modes. Summoner Duels is very much the direct opposite of PvE, so it's naturally not going to appeal to that many people comparatively, especially since it requires a lot of time investment compared to everything else in the game. It's just not as appealing to many. Fae definitely has that one strong benefit of being very quick each day, at most about 5 minutes to do basically everything, maybe a bit more depending on the current events going on in the game. And I don't say that in any sort of condescending way or with any sort of better than you attitude. I very much agree that we need more PvE content, and I've definitely talked about it enough times, so I'm not going to repeat myself any more than I have to. It's just annoying that there really isn't much else to do if you aren't interested in playing Summoner Duels, let alone the RNG variant. Is that what the R in SDR stands for? But that begs the question, how can IS get more people to play Summoner Duels? Summoner Duels are, for what it's worth, is definitely both the easiest to get into since it only requires 5 units, and the most annoying since you could just get counterpicked and automatically lose. But it's also because of that I just assume even less people play Summoner Duels R over Summoner Duels S, which means the best way to make people play the mode is to have more incentives, something that could really drive engage meant to the mode. And listen, I'm not as evil to suggest them putting orbs in the mode. It might work if they do that though. If they did add some additional reward based on higher ranks and participation that has general player appeal, I think more people would try for a higher rank. So maybe orbs. Okay, besides that, maybe arena tickets? Would people get upset at IS if they put arena tickets at higher ranks? I feel like no matter what they put in, it's just going to make people annoyed, so they probably shouldn't do that. And the rewards in the mode itself aren't even that bad as is. Although it doesn't help that most of the rewards are the same between most tiers, so there's even less of a reason to climb up to rank 1 unless you really want those accessories. By the way, did you know that the accessories from Summoner Duels R are different from Summoner Duels S? I don't think most people knew that, and that's not something I think most people even care about, so if that means anything to you, then yeah, there's your incentive, I guess. Go wild. But there's not much else I got besides adding more potential rewards. and that should tell you how stumped I am. But, you know, IS, if you are hiring, you know, I can fill that position if you want. Adding more rewards would also probably only benefit those who already participate as is, which means there's basically no reason to do that. So that makes me wonder how they could force more engagement in the mode itself. Wait, what? You're asking how to make Summoner Duels R, and by extension Summoner Duels as a whole, more enjoyable? Oh, I see. I get it. Oh, okay. That's an easy one. You can't. I think it's just the nature of the game, unfortunately. Gacha and PvP don't mix that well together, despite how I feel about Summoner Duels S at least. I think that mode is pretty well designed given the ban system, but Summoner Duels S also suffers from gacha elements in and of itself due to having to not only make 4 teams, but also having enough good units on each of them to be competitive enough. Some units, again, being more or less required for you to really function in both modes at times. It's really not the easiest mode to get into, and even with it being designed as the end game mode, people sure don't care enough about it for it to matter either way. I mentioned it in another video before, but they really could design a new type of Summoner Duels mode that just gives everybody 20 to 30 pre-made units and whatnot, and that would at least remove most of the barrier of entry for basically everyone. I'm not sure if it would attract any new players to the mode, but it would certainly make the idea of playing it less nauseating, potentially, possibly. I don't know, maybe. Although if that fails and nothing could really convince more people to play Summoner Duels, then there's one secret technique that is a surefire way to entice the player base into playing more of the game. They could run more enjoyable modes at a more frequent pace instead. Wouldn't that be nice? It makes me wonder if they could make a mode that's appealing to most people while also incentivizing enough. I guess that would be stuff like Hall of Forums and Binding Roads, but I'm not sure to what extent that really applies. And it's not like having something easily playable and generally appealing sells newer stuff, so maybe I'm just coping at this point. Hoping and coping, mind you. And yeah, unpopular mode sure is unpopular, more news at 11, but if there's any takeaway that could be had from this video, it's this. I'd rather play any form of Summoner Duels than Arena Assault at this point. I can lose one time in Summoner Duels and be done with it for the week, or lose in Arena and hate myself for it. That doesn't make the mode better, it just means you lose no matter what. Didn't expect that!